It's a 2006 Mini Cooper S JCW, and we're going to take off an OEM brake line and put on a new stainless steel brake line. Pretty simple job here. We've got to remove two connections, that one there, and then there's another one on the back. If we follow the brake line to the back of the caliper, and we can see that there's a 12mm head right there, and when we take that off, it'll drip brake fluid and out of both sides as well. So you can see down here, I have a rag and a cup. There's actually plastic underneath there as well. And you want to be pretty careful with the brake fluid. It's very corrosive, and just as long as you wipe it up pretty quickly, you'll be all right. But, okay, we're getting ready to get started here, and since I'm not going to use these brake lines again, I'm going to go ahead and put on some vice grips in an attempt to keep it from leaking a whole lot. So let's go ahead and get this. Not dripping yet. There we go. Got pretty decent aim there. All right, that's one. I'm gonna let that drip right there. So. Yeah, okay, on this one, we don't need the 17 yet. You just need to keep loosening the top 11. So when I pull this out, what we're going to see is the bottom of this hard line, and I've got some paper towels there to catch it. Okay, so now the line is totally loose, and so here's this. I'm going to go ahead and just put that thing in the trash can, because you just don't want it dripping. So if it drips in there, that's no problem. Okay, so we can see this is going to be dripping, so there's some amount of haste now. So I'm going to quit filming and get that connection done. I didn't show it, but I did lifted up this metal clip and cleaned all the dirt off. And you really got to make sure you have a clean, hard brake line connection, so just make sure to wipe that off. It's pretty straightforward because it's dripping brake fluid, so you can. Okay, so we're going to come back and clean that off better later. I didn't tighten it, I didn't torque it, I just put it good enough to quit leaking, and you can see, so what happens is these lines are lower than the supply, so it's just going to drip out slowly here. So there's two washers that go on here. These are crush washers, and so we got one that goes on that side, and then one goes on the other side. So this one will be between this fitting and the caliper. So I'm going to go ahead and get that on. Okay. So here's that fitting right there. And it turns out it's a 14, and I'm just going to snug that. You want to make sure and hold the brake line in a direction that you want it to be in, because it'll turn as you tighten that. So I've just got it tightened snug enough to where the brake fluid is not going to leak anymore. So what I'm going to do now, and I've got plenty of brake fluid on my iPhone, so this will be interesting. I need to get that off pretty quick. So I probably spilled some on the floor, so I'm going to just take a break and do a little cleanup, and then I will come back. On the driver's side rear here, and so there's only two connections. Well, there's only one connection with a with a, I guess, a nut assembly. So that's the one, and we have this right here. So what you do on this hose, this connection is similar to the one on the front, but this one goes directly into the caliper. So what you have to do is to remove this one first from the OEM. Okay, make sure you're catching all this stuff as it drips. Also, make sure your brake reservoir is totally full before you start this. And mine is, so I'm not worried about dripping for a while. I'm gonna bleed it anyway. So so you take that one off, and you would have loosened this one first from the OEM perspective. I'll show you this one here. So just break this one loose, take the top off, the front connection, and then you just be able to twist this, see, like twisting the hose. So that's actually how you tighten it up. And I believe it's 10 foot-pounds on that, and 10 foot-pounds on that one up there. So right over here to the other side that I've already done. You see, that's the caliper side, and the front side there where it attaches to the hard line. And one thing you need to do is really super dry, super clean these areas where the connections are, because we're going to make sure they're not leaking later. So there needs to be no doubt. If you see brake fluid later, you've got a leak. So you gotta really clean it really good, so there's no extra brake fluid sitting around that you're going to mistake for a leak later. Okay, a couple of words on the sealing on these brake lines. The threads don't do any of the sealing, unlike some other plumbing applications. So this is a banjo bolt, and you can see there's a hole there and there's a hole there, and so those holes meet up. And so what happens is the brake fluid comes through the line and through that top hole and comes out through the bottom hole. And so what happens, the copper crush washers do the sealing here, and you can only use them one time. You cannot use them twice because they deform and they work harden, and you just can't. You just gotta, if you think you're gonna need to disassemble it after you assemble it, get some more crush washers from the store so you don't have to go back down there. So again, on the same theme, on the other side, we can see, if we look down there, the sealing happens right at the bottom, and that other fitting from the hard part of the brake line seals on that, I don't know if it's a conical surface or hemispherical or whatnot, but that's where it seals. It does not seal on the threads. I'm trying to shine a light, and in fact you can see the threads, these are the OEM lines, have some rust or something built up on them. But so it's just important to know that the sealing surfaces you're working with, are not the threads, they're the internal pieces. Here's another one. This actually sealing surface is a little bit more visible. It's kind of shiny. You can see this one has some rust on the threads or something. So the brake fluid is really corrosive, and it likes to suck up water. And if you're doing everyday driving, it's probably not that big of a deal, but if you're doing any kind of performance driving where your brakes are heating up, this is why you need to change your brake fluid, flush it regularly, because the brakes will get very hot, and if the water boils, you're in trouble. You're going to lose your brakes. So that's why it's important that everything be sealed, and we keep water out of the system, and then just flush the old brake fluid out to get the old fluid that has water, because there is, there's air inside your reservoir cap that has some amount of water in it, and just over time it'll collect more water. Now it's time to bleed the brakes. So what I have is a alternate cap to fit on the brake fluid reservoir, and you put just a little bit of air pressure on the back of that. So that's probably 10 psi or less, and it's really nice. All you have to worry about, you don't have to worry about pressing the brake pedal, just worry about running out of fluid as you do this. So you got to make sure and have your fluid ready, and generally they'll tell you to start farthest away from the brake cylinder. So I'm at the rear right passenger side. So you pull off this. Okay, I've got that little cable tie off of there. So we're going to crack that. I believe it's an 11, and we do have pressure on it now, so it's probably worthwhile to go ahead and check and make sure you don't see any leaks here or over there, and all that looks good. So just to show you what this looks like. Okay, it's a 10. So we crack that. Oh boy, it doesn't look too good. It's kind of brown. I don't know if you can see it. So this is the nice thing about having the pressure on the system, is that all I have to do is crack that, and it just runs automatically down there. You just have to be careful. It comes out pretty fast. So if you have a lot of air in the system, you might see some bubbles coming out. Even there could be air getting in through the threads also. So bubbles doesn't necessarily mean you have a lot of air. It could just be that. So that's probably, let's see how much will come out. That hose will hold more than you think. So anyway, that's how it's done. So I'll just go around to each of the wheels and do this, and then make sure, I'll probably do the other rear and then add a little more brake fluid to the front. Okay, so I'm done bleeding that one, so just pull this off, and you want to, well, yeah, okay, so you want to not do it that way really, because you can see it sprayed some brake fluid around, and you just don't want that stuff going everywhere, so you just have to wipe it up. I actually felt some go on my leg. So anyway, you got to clean all that up good, then you can, see how much I've got. That looks pretty bad. I mean, usually the darker color it is means it's pretty old. So we'll keep going around.